To first of all welcome everyone today and hope you had a nice weekend. And we also have some beautiful weather this past weekend.
Thank
But
you.
one of the things that I love about, I'm going to say, my job or what I do is getting to meet people. And through meeting people, I met Marina's dad, and then I met Marina. And I just want to share a little bit about her. I know that we've been sharing over the last week or two a little bit of her accolades, but I realized, Marina, I have to apologize. I've been writing 5 Emmy Awards, and I just counted you have 6.
Five.
So
No,
I'm
you're
more
right. I have five, 6 nominations, 5 wins.
okay. So I was correct. Okay, then I'm
Yeah.
good. But I'm going to say, a very celebrated costume and fashion designer, definitely in Hollywood and as well in the entertainment industry. And actually, I was asking people earlier if anyone has been watching The Masked Singer, which is something that Marina has been working on most recently on Fox. So definitely a show where you see some of the creativity that
Mm.
Marina gets to have in her design. But that's not her only. That's not her only clientele. And as I had written that, she has designed outfits that were worn in tours and music videos for Taylor Swift, Ariana Grande, Katy Perry, Nicki Minaj, Pink, Carrie Underwood, Fifth Harmony, and others. And then, of course, television series that, like we mentioned, The Masked Singer, So You Think You Can Dance, World of Dance. And I think that most of us are obviously very, very curious um, how you began your career and how you got to where you are, and of course, the things that you find the most, and I'm going to say most fulfilling through your work and who you meet.
Right.
And Marina, again, like I mentioned, was born in Moscow, Russia, came to the United States at the age of 11, lived in Phoenix, and then through her career has ended up in California. So I'm going to spotlight you so you can share about yourself and about your work, and then hopefully take some questions afterwards. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for the introduction and thank you so much for having me here today. It's so wonderful to get to meet all of you and, spend some time together and share some great moments. As Levi said, I started fairly young in my career. Started sketching and drawing when I was about 13, 14 years old. When I was 15, I started creating my own designs, hiring local people in Phoenix that could help me execute my vision. At 17, I had my own fashion show at my high school when I graduated. And from there, I moved to Los Angeles to go to a fashion school. And it's been quite a journey, about 20 years plus of very hard work, very long hours. In the beginning, not knowing what I was getting myself involved with, had my own clothing line for about 4 years, funded everything myself, had a few business partners that fell off and we went separate ways. And from there, I started kind of doing my own research and finding people, asking for help, networking, doing a lot of free work for many years, volunteering to work with certain stylists or people in my field. And in 2010, I got my first break to be on the TV show where a friend of mine recommended me for the job. I didn't know what I was doing. I went in, had an interview, got the job, but then realized I would have to be in the guild in order to do television. So I had about 24 hours um, to call around, ask for some favors, get some recommendation letters, put my portfolio together, get into the union, which is 892 in Los Angeles, and that's a costume designers guild. And they're the protection union for us to do television or film. Got myself into the guild and then started X Factor was my first TV show. About anywhere from 100 to 300 costumes a week. So it was probably the hardest job I've had, and a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge. And from there, I started working a lot with celebrities and doing music tours, traveling the world with them, doing a lot of music, and probably dedicate about a decade to just designing for music. And then slowly started gradually getting into serious costumes on television. So that's a little bit of where I'm at. um, I've had the honor of being recognized by my peers. Over the past 7 years, I've had 6 nominations for the Emmys. My team and I won 5 of them, which is pretty incredible, and I'm very honored. took me a long time to gather my team, and I really do take pride that I think I have the best team in Los Angeles. And currently, I'm on The Masked Singer. I just finished season 5, which is airing currently on Fox, and about to start getting myself involved with film. So that's the next step, is designing big cinematography and big features.
So that's all. Before you show some of your work
Yes.
and things like that, what, just curious for most of us who don't really, like myself, I can't speak for others, the difference sort of between where you began, let's say with TV show, and then moved into celebrities or artists, and then now moving into movies. What are the different parts that that entails? Is that just a larger production set, or?
I think the responsibilities stay the same. The creativity is kind of what the driving force is. Of course, being able to do film, it's a different world for us, especially for me. Um, Bigger production scales, bigger budget, a lot more kind of broader experience as far as being, when you're looking at a movie, you're talking about character analysis, character breakdown, being able to create visual stories, which I've had, experience in some short films, and I've done shows now for so many years to where I understand what the audience are looking for. I understand the time pressures that we are, tedious work that goes into this, the amount of work. Usually when I do my shows, I work about 7 days a week for a period of 3 to 6 months, given on a different project. So we've all learned how to cope with really stressful scenarios, and expectations, and things constantly change. So there's challenges thrown at me day in and day out, how to work, how to not just design and execute this stuff, but also being able to have longevity in all the costumes or anything that we're stimulating our audience with. So I think as far as that transition, it's definitely something I'm really excited to do, and I'm sure it's going to make me work 8 days a week if that's possible. But trying to figure out new ways to grow and become more enhanced in costume design world.
And I guess, how large is your team? That's probably a good question.
Lucky enough, on a show like Mass Singer, I have about 35 people that work with me, and that's in different departments. We have our main sewing crew, we have our costumers, who are the people that help me shop certain materials and also help me maintain the costumes with the celebrities. I have my builder shop that create the masks for me and all the structural and physical builds. So anywhere between, we'll start out with a skeleton crew of about me plus 6 people, and then once we really start getting into the creative builds, about 30 of us are on a project at once.
Wow. So do you still
Yeah.
have the first, I'm going to say, design that you've ever created, or is that way beyond what you've kept?
I think I have the pictures.
Oh,
I've been able to save up quite a bit over the years. I don't quite remember who might have the first design. I think it was one of those things because I was so young, and it was more for me kind of to collaborate with my friends when I was still in my teens. Somebody has it. So somebody is holding on to it right now. But I definitely still have the sketches and the photographs.
which is pretty amazing. You said in high school is your first
Yes.
fashion, you said fashion show.
Yes. Right when I graduated, I collaborated with my school. Every year we had a prom fashion show, which is kind of the typical way to show what's in stores, promoting going to prom, and what's in fashion or what's popular. So I had the chance to actually do something very different and create my own kind of visual looks for prom. So the school worked with me on that. And I already at that moment moved to Los Angeles. So I found a sewer here that could help me while I was going to school. At nights, I would sit and design all these pieces to then bring back to Phoenix to do my prom fashion show there.
Wow. And I know someone asked in the chat, I should have mentioned this earlier. You went to Mountain Shadow, correct, for high
I went to
school?
Shadow Mountain. Yeah,
Shadow Mountain, sorry.
close enough.
And then one of the questions that in the chat was, after a costume is, let's say you had mentioned you don't keep all of them, what happens to those costumes after the show is over, or after a TV show or whatever you're working on?
Everything that we build for TV becomes property of the studios of the network. So they hold on to all the costumes. I've been lucky enough where some signature or significant pieces, if we're not reusing them or they're not being showcased again, I've been lucky enough where I can hold on to them in my studio and in my storage. But on a scale like The Masked Singer, since each costume is museum worthy, the show does hold on to them, and I've helped them actually do a few exhibits where season one we had two music exhibits happening in Los Angeles and New York. So a lot of these costumes that become wearable art do remain with property of the show.
Oh wow, that's pretty amazing. Okay, so did you want to share some of your
Yeah, I
designs
chose
within the
some of
show?
my favorites throughout the seasons. This is kind of the beginning process of how we build the show. So we create this intricate sketch design. I work with an illustrator. I do my own sketches by pencil, and then we digitally turn them into these really cool masterpieces. Um, that's one of them. That was the mushroom from season four. And then this was my lion character from season one. As you can see, very fantasy, sci fi inspired at the same time. Because I've had so much education in fashion, I kind of marry the two worlds. Um, is it clear enough? Can you guys see them, or is
Yeah,
the
that's
glare
good.
too much?
Yeah, that's been good. Gets
Um,
a little clear, but
this was a very kind of popular costume from season four. We had the white tiger, um, very kind of Egyptian goddess inspired. So I bring a lot of mythology into a lot of my work and a lot of historic efforts and research. Um, so it's sketches like this that we then dissect and take apart, and I start creating the fabrics for it. A lot of the stuff that we do is very hands-on. We dye our own fabrics, we create our own structures, build out our own foams, do a lot of test runs on how to really put this together. And on a show like Masked Singer, most people think I have about a year to design this, and I get about 2 months. So I get a month to do all the artwork, and then 2 months to start building and overlapping about 15 to 20 costumes a season. And then we go into the live shows where we have the dancers, and everything else that's being added on.
wow. So what it has been I'm gonna say because it not just from those. What is the one costume that just comes to mind that has been the longest or most tedious to build or create?
Season four, when we went into, when the world shut down, I guess, and we went into pandemic, we opened up about 2 months being in quarantine. So, of course, with all the restrictions and protocols and figuring out how to do this together and keep everyone safe was probably my biggest challenge in general. How to go back to work under the conditions that we're at, under the uncertainties, and for me, it was very hard and challenging because so many places were closed. So we were very limited on our resources, how to build a show on a scale and make it be the number one show in America. So I really had to bring my life back to basics, and we all regrouped and tried to figure out what is it. How do we went back to sewing by hand. We went back to really doing a lot of work in house, creating textures, being able to draw on a lot of our fabrics to create unique details that we weren't able to purchase. One of the costumes that was probably the toughest, I brought in puppetry into season four. It was our first handmade puppet for a costume. And that took some time to build, to figure out how to get a person in there, how to let them sing and dance, and at the same time, how to utilize um, levels above traditional costume design to now marry the wearable art with puppetry. So and successfully enough, it was the viewers one of the favorites. So I was very excited we were able to achieve that.
Cool. So curious question in the sense of I'm going to use the word competition. How many other costume designers are out there in the sense when a show chooses you over someone else? Like, is that through a bidding process kind of, or?
There's so many of us, and we're all so different. I think there's so many outlets for costume design. I have found myself to have a niche where it's a kind of a combination, like I said, between costume design and fashion design, and then also very large movable builds. So it's not so much timing into contemporary or period or film. Because I've had so much experience doing music and stage and live performances, I've had the knowledge to really broaden my experiences in all avenues of costume design. So for a show like The Masked Singer, there's only a few of us that really specialize in that. So when it comes to a hiring process, just like everyone else, I went in for an interview. I met with the executive producers, understood the concept of the show, did a few trial sketches to see if I was the right fit. And then, of course, the decision is left up to the network or the producers who they thought would be the best fit. Um, in my field, I think a lot of it does have to do with word of mouth, and the experiences that the networks had. I've been with Fox for about 10 years now. So for them, I was somebody that was familiar. So they knew my work, they knew the level of deliverance that I can do, they knew my qualifications, my strengths. So with this show, I know that there were multiple designers that went for the job, and luckily enough, I was the one chosen.
Nice. Question that came in the chat. Do you know who is going to wear a piece before you design it so you get the size right, or that is?
Luck, we have lucky moments where I do know the process of the show. Where I work closely with a casting director, so I'm aware who is being signed on every few days or every week, going into our builds. I have one-on-one conversations with our talent to see which costume they would like to have. How can I enhance it? There's many times I'll make costume, very custom work as well. They'll love the sketch, they love the idea, and then I hear about their talents or things that they're really great in. Are they going to be performing on stage and moving around? Are they going to be stoic? So all those are all the things I take into consideration. And then I do work with them one-on-one through fittings, and I alter things accordingly, and we tailor everything to where it's the best experience for them. And at the same time, this is a unique show because it's not something that we're all used to. You're wearing a big mask, a big costume, you're singing live. There's so many things besides design I have to consider into creating my work, because a lot of science goes into it. Can they sing? Can they see? Am I allowing enough air to come circulate inside the costume? Is the structure too heavy? Most of the things I do try on myself before we even get to those final fittings, to make sure we're executing the work properly. And also, is it something that could be worn on stage? One thing in the fitting is to do something, and stage lighting are two different things. So every single time it's trial and error when it comes to working with celebrities and figuring this out.
That's a lot of things to deal with, I guess.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you mentioned that you said kind of like in the beginning of your early career was you started a fashion line.
Right.
How far from what you currently do to what the idea of fashion design in general? Like, is that something a crossover? Like you can go right back into that?
It does kind of has that fine line between mass production and costume design versus fashion design. I've been able to marry the two worlds and kind of use all the knowledge that I have to be innovative in all my artwork and all my ideas. It's not an easy jump back and forth because how much time each category takes, or each pursuit takes. Um, it would be something that I would almost have to stop my line of costume design in order to go back and create my own line again, and do my own things, just because it's so hands-on and it's a very different process. On the show, I deal a lot with the creative departments. I deal a lot with the platform of the network and the studios, and what the overall image of the show is. Where if I took it back to my old clothing line, a lot of it relies on me, so it's my own vision, knowing my consumer, knowing my marketing, hiring my own team to execute this with me. So I would say completely two different worlds, but at the same time, design is design. So there's a lot of fashion designers right now that are implementing ideas of costume design into everyday wear, and vice versa. There's a lot of costume designers that bring in fashion design into a lot of their work. So I think being able to design from nothing and being able to execute your ideas, it really what it's all about. That's the art of the job. And I think just the two different markets is where, you kind of choose which direction you like to go in.
Thanks. I'm going to open up questions if people want to either through the chat or through their mics. But question for you: do you miss Arizona?
I miss my parents.
Well, I
um,
know your dad he tries to get up as often as possible to California. So that's
yes.
the
I think for me, for the passions that I have, for the career that I have, for the things that I've always wanted to do, LA is a better place and a better home and a better environment. I I often think if I would have stayed in Arizona, how difficult it might have been for me to really achieve the things I wanted. But now I also see how progressive Arizona has been, especially with Scottsdale and having all these outlets for designers in general. I think it's great, but for me personally, I think it would have been very difficult to stay home and do the things I wanted to do.
So on the note of, let's say, for celebrities, not for the Masked Singer,
Right.
is you're obviously involved in their stage production. Does that also come off to the red carpet, or that's totally different?
Yeah. I have been with multiple clients where I've done overall kind of costuming and styling. The red carpets, I've done a few custom things. And sometimes it's easier that way because once you're creating an image for somebody and you expose them to their world and their fan base, this is their style, this is their aesthetic, um, this is the genre of music they're in, this is how we're going to create a performance and especially a tour that so many people get to see. It's easier to kind of be an all-rounded person, kind of like fashion support for that artist, because then you constantly want to improve their red carpets, you want to show the best light and marry the idea between their career and how they step out into the spotlight. But I have done multiple avenues to where I've just done music, and then done the tours and then stepped away, and there was another person involved that does all their day-to-day in press and red carpets. So it's we either work as a team or we do take on full clients.
So a question on that same note, which I know will be pertinent to someone who's tuning in. What about the jewelry side to that?
I work very closely with a lot of brands. I don't create my own jewelry, but when it comes to red carpets, if I did create a dress or I pull a dress from a showroom and I use a lot of other designers and we work together, same process goes for jewelry. I would go to different showrooms, a lot of different companies from small, independent businesses to very large brands that people are aware of. And we kind of create the best look. I think it's what's the best. It's not about money, it's not about how expensive these things are or how popular they are. It really is like what is the final finish and what is the beautiful touch to what we're trying to create.
Nice. I'm gonna open up. If anyone does have a question for Marina, Betsy, that was for you. Um, I know she has dealt with or worked in jewelry and
Yes.
private jewelry lines and things like that. If anyone has a question, I have a question. This is a standard grandma question.
Yes.
Did you what year did you graduate from Shadow Mountain? Her son graduated in 94 and she wants to know if you know her son.
2000. I graduated in 2000, so I might have just missed them by what, 4 years.
That was an important question, of course. If anyone does have a question, don't be shy. You can unmute your mic or message it through the chat. Efim, do you have any questions for your daughter? I know you're muted, but he says it's all
He's
good.
good. He talks to me every night. He knows all my questions.
That's right. He gets to see your beautiful children. That's why.
Yes. And
So
that's
how does
challenging, that's probably
that's a
been.
good question. Yeah, I was curious about that.
I never stopped working. I had two babies back to back. My first son, I took to Las Vegas with me when he was 2 months old. I've had my babies by my side throughout my career. It was very difficult for me to stop. And not just for me. There was moments I took a break to make sure family comes first. But when you are overseeing so many people on your team and their employment depends on the jobs that I book or the things that I do, I try to find a way to balance and always have my kids by my side while still being able to empower women and show that this is possible, and at the same time do the best job that I can. All the seasons of The Masked Singer, I was pregnant throughout. doing the shows, and I worked till about 39 weeks with my second baby. Um, and tried my best, to be a mom first and foremost, but at the same time also still be a leader for my team.
That's
So
pretty
that's been
amazing.
hard.
Yeah, that's amazing though. You're a good mom. Question that came up. Did you design your own wedding dress?
I did and didn't. I've had many options of things I wanted to do. I was working on two different projects at the same time, so it was very hard for me to find the time to do so. But then I couldn't just wear a dress off the rack. So when I did find a few things that I liked, I went in with my sewers and I changed it all up and I made sure it was just the right moment and the right dress for me. So I did, use a base of a dress that I bought and then rework the whole thing. So technically, yes and no.
Was the fashion designer for that dress like, do they get upset that you're tinkering with their design?
I don't know because I feel like that is also how we shop, and that goes back to when I had my own clothing line. There's many things that you design and you put out there for people to love and appreciate and wear, but at the same time, everybody has their own taste and their own style. So you always have to be open to the idea that your pieces or anything that you buy would always be custom to us. And I'm very much aware of it even when I design, that when I design, I'm not just doing this for me because I love it so much, but I'm trying to understand, when it's for a specific person, when it's for a show, when it's for a performance, who are they? What are they going to love to wear? How can I make this be the most beautiful moment for them? So with that being in mind, with that being said, when it came to my own wedding dresses, I wanted something special for me, even though I have the ability to design it from scratch. With my time constraints, it was something that, okay, if I'm going to work with a pre-existing piece, I still want it to be something special for me. And that's when I used, my talents and my team to kind of go in and recreate something that I knew was, more for my soul.
All right, I like that. I think that's for all of us, right? It's like how you mesh your multiple parts of a wardrobe, but you're doing it
Right.
on one specific dress. So on that note, someone asked if you have a picture of your wedding so they can see the dress.
Oh, I don't think I have it with me, but I can definitely send that through.
Judy, that one was for you. Send me an email. We'll ask
Yes,
when we.
yes, I will definitely share that.
Okay,
There's
so
three different dresses because I
oh,
couldn't
really?
decide.
Three different dresses at your wedding that you had to change into?
I had my wedding dress, I had my dinner dress, and then I had my let's just be with my friends and family dress.
Wow. Wow. All right, cool. And I'm sure each one of them was a lot of work just to put together.
Oh yeah, I was still sewing, I think, the day of the wedding, including my mother-in-law's dress. Like I was still trying to change things around and, you know, until the very last minute. That's how my career is too. I won't give up until like I know it's perfect.
So on that, a question that came up not regarding your wedding. What was your favorite costume or style design project?
Oh, there's been so many and they're all so different. When I did the halftime show for Katy Perry, the Pepsi's halftime for Super Bowl, that was probably the most interesting job for me just because there were so many variants from building puppetry to these exquisite chess pieces. It was so theatrical that as hard of the process that was to figure out how to build all that in 3 weeks, it was still a very great collaboration and a very hands-on project. And I really think it pulled out the best in my team as well. I saw ideas and new techniques that we haven't done before. I saw people just get so excited. And I think that's what's so great for me is when I bring a project to the table and my team is excited, that's when I know we're about to create magic, because that's when we collaborate and share ideas and share experiences and all educate ourselves. So I'd probably say Super Bowl would have to be one of my favorites.
Did you say 3 weeks?
Yeah.
Didn't she know she was performing like earlier than that?
Yes, with because there's such big productions, there's different departments and and different start times and kind of different pieces that have to come together. And for something like the Super Bowl, I mean, there's the music aspect, there's the creative direction, there's the filming, the lighting, there's the staging, there's just so many departments that have their own time frames that for us, when we came in, it was already okay. The creative's been established. These are the songs that Katy's performing. This is kind of what the environment is. I've had a really great relationship with the creative director, so I was able to jump in right away and understand what's the aesthetic, what are we looking to accomplish, how does Katy want to perceive the show, how do we attract this many audience, and then from there, it's my job was to come in and kind of like assess, which designs are going to be great for presenting to Katy and getting the approvals and then going forward.
Wow, that is pretty amazing.
Yeah, so everyone kind of gets brought in at different times, so until it was the right moment to bring in costumes, there really wasn't anything I could have done to kind of give us more time.
Wow. Okay, so a question that you kind of answered because you said you haven't really gone into film yet. But the question in the chat was, have you ever done a costume for a film? So,
I have. I've worked on a few shorts. I did one film that didn't go anywhere, but it was a great experience. It was called The Whole Banana, and it was an incredible cast, and it was a very modern piece for me and very contemporary, which is different from the work that I do. So that was probably the first big project I worked on as a film. And unfortunately, the film didn't go anywhere. But like I said, the experience is there. So I know how to go from morning shifts to night shifts. So at least now I understand how production works on that level. And I've done a few documentaries as well. I've done documentaries on Africa. I've done documentaries on space costumes, so there's a few things I have under my belt that I think, would help me out in the process of the future getting a film.
so a question that was asked, I mean, it's kind of like an interesting, I think for all of us will be curious. In Judaism, there's this actually a teaching that says, jealousy is wrong, right? You should never be jealous of someone else, but jealousy of someone that would help you. In other words, like somebody who's wise, you want to learn from them. You're jealous of what they've achieved, but it helps you. So that's a good jealousy.
Right.
So in your career, who are the people kind of that you look up to? Or maybe another costume designer or
Oh,
just
so
fashion
many.
designer that
I I study work so often. I study work, costume designer work from 1920s. I study their work from Broadway to film, to stage to music. I mean, every day, even when we're building new shows, that there's so much research goes into it. I admire so many costume designers. Um, I've studied, a lot of musicians. Even just doing The Masked Singer, I had to look up a lot of Elton John to see what can he bring to the table that I can then create this interesting musical costume that kind of represents who he is. Um, I've had to look up a lot of opera, because they are always so exquisite and in terms of like what they create on that stage. So for me, it's never ending. I think there's always, I guess you would say, that positive jealousy to where I'm inspired and impressed by so much work, so many beautiful artists out there. I've studied a lot of even Picasso just to see, the paintings and what they bring to life and how can I bring that into my fabrics. So yeah, it goes across the board. One of my favorites is Salvador Dali. Um, from Spain. I was lucky enough to not just be in his museum, but visit his home when I was in Spain. So all those like intricate and abstract inspirations are always something that I keep in mind when designing.
does your mom critique your work?
No,
No?
no, I think they're such great fans, and I ask for advice very often. Like I'll send them pictures before anybody gets to see the costumes. It's important for me to see that they like or not like something, and I think it's okay if we have different of opinions, but I value that support so much. And we're such a small little close family that I share everything with them.
All right, I love that. Okay, so question in the chat. How do you market yourself? Are there auditions, showings? I know you mentioned word of mouth. Is there an agent?
I have been with multiple agencies throughout time, and it's been very hard to find somebody that was perfect for me, just because my expectations are very high and I also know what it's like to work very hard. And so I always have that being a priority for me when it comes to my team. So I recently just got signed with a very big management company in Los Angeles in order to do film. So that just happened about 2 weeks ago. But I have a PR agent that's been by my side. I have an executive assistant that's been with me for about 12 years that knows my ins and outs, being there with me when I've had nothing to still being with me when we're trying to achieve everything. So I do have an internal team that's been by my side, that's been guiding me through decision making and proper marketing. And I'm very careful when it comes to press. Um, I like to make sure I have kind of my own life, and don't get jaded by the idea of what I do for a living. I like the normalcy part of it, but at the same time, I also like to share my story, and hopefully that it inspires people. So I still work very closely with FITM. I've done a few seminars there. I always respond to students and try to help them out in the ways that I didn't have the help 20 years ago. Um, so like I said, I think when I do press, it's very much geared towards either sharing the positive sides of my story or being able to inspire people. And with that in mind, I always try to find the right team that can support that. Um, Over the years, because I've had a hard time finding a good balance for me in my business, I've learned a lot. I can read my own contracts. I can do legal. I can do my own taxes when it comes to business. I do have all those people in place now, but because it was so challenging, being able to trust people to come in, at the end of the day, the way I just explained it to an agency, this is my life. This is what I've built. This is what I work on every day and trying to perfect it. So if I don't have the right person behind me that can understand how fragile um, my world is that I'm handing over to you, then you're not the right fit for me. And I've always looked at it as a manager and a client, or a press agent and a client. We're like glass. The second you shatter us, it's very hard to put it together. It's very hard to like glue those pieces together to regain that momentum and that friendship and that relationship. So I do have a team now, but it took a lot of years to get there.
So you had mentioned that I'm going to say it was mentoring, right? Is that kind of what you
Right.
had mentioned? Do you also present to some? This is a question that came from the chat. Do you
Yeah.
lecture or teach at the Fashion Institute, or maybe the one in New York?
We've been in the talks. Fidim and I have been trying to figure out ways for me to go in and teach. Unfortunately, because of my schedules right now, it's very hard to find an exact time slot where I can go a few days a week to really be there. Because once I dedicate myself to that, I would like to be there full time, and I would like to be there to kind of be the guiding hand for a lot of these students. So we're currently in the in the works of trying to figure that out. But I would love to eventually go in and assist and help as much as I can and open up opportunities for kids. Whether it be in LA or New York, creating my own master classes. I definitely think a few more years and I'll be able to start fully like endorsing that part of my career.
Nice. Yeah, that's probably a rewarding side to it where you can sort of boost someone else's, but it's not, especially how you mentioned you had
Yeah.
years of nothing, if you want to call it that, where it wasn't like building, you weren't building up, you were just trying to get in.
Yeah, and like I've spent so many years sewing myself, and I think that's what's really helped me moving forward is I've taken the time to learn everything about my career myself. From buying my own materials, sitting behind my own machine, not sleeping at nights, getting the deadlines done. I didn't know that such thing as assistance existed. I didn't know that there was outside help. So I think because it took me so many years to learn and acquire all the knowledge, I'm now in a position where I can give that back, and I can help my team and collaborate with my team how to create the right patterns, how to drape something in a way that I've had experience of doing and taking in their knowledge. So now is the time that I get fan mail every day from kids all over fashion schools or all over the world saying that I'm now sitting here studying your work. And every day that's still a shock to me, that when I went to school, there's so many people I studied. And I remember sending those emails and trying to
That's
get a hold
amazing.
of somebody, and it's
That
like,
really is amazing.
yeah, to see that now where I just got an email last night from a girl in Germany saying that for the past 5 years, she's only been studying my work, and it's just surreal to see that there's been such an impact.
Wow. So question that came in the chat that's I guess more of your opinion. What do you think of Project Runway and the short time frames for creating?
Well, funny thing with Project Runway, when the show first came out, I auditioned for it and I was almost going to be on the first season of the show. And at that time is when I had my business partner and we had our own line. And unfortunately, because I now know how the shows work and I now know which parts of it are produced, back then, we just thought it was a great opportunity. But then what was happening is we were going to have to compete against each other. And because we were so young and because we had so much passion and so much love for our brand, we decided not to do the show and not to compete against one another and still, continue with our own path and our own brand. But I love the show. I think it's interesting. I think it gives a great platform to so many designers. And I think it does showcase, some realistic, some unrealistic expectations. And, I think it's a great show.
Thank you. So I know that there are probably other questions that I should be asking you. Is there a question I should be asking you that you think would be good knowledge for others that are on here to know either about you or about in general the fashion and costume design?
Oh man, I don't even know. There sometimes I'm not even aware like how to answer some of the questions. One of the biggest things I've always been asked, inspiration, what's your inspiration? And the older I get, I don't even know how to answer that question because I think there's so much that's constantly brewing in our brains and things that we take so close to us or things that we take from granted and then learn later on. That I think for me, like it's just being able to accept my life every day and be inspired by that, and so much of our work is surrounded by who we are that I think most people can relate to that it's taking everything internally and then being able, to make it external for others to see.
Right. Yeah. That's a great way of putting that. So someone asked in the chat if you don't mind sharing more about your awards. I know that
Yes.
we've been talking about Emmys, but I noticed you also have two other awards from, I think it was from a guild maybe or from
Yes.
the. And then if you
Last
have any
year,
more pictures, that was part of their question. If you have any more pictures you would show.
well, I have one more laying here. This was one of my favorite costumes. This was the take on a ladybug. So I combined the Japanese samurai, a kind of a geisha approach to a real life ladybug. So you can see that there is the Japanese influence on the top mask of the costume. And then we go into this beautiful fold and unfold of a ladybug. So that's one of the sketches. I don't even know if I have anything else around me, but going back to my awards, I've been honored with the Costume Designers Guild Award last year for the Masked Singer as well. That was my second nomination, first win. And then a few years ago, I received the Hollywood Beauty Award, which was a Lifetime Career Achievement Award for all avenues of costume design. So that was very unexpected and a pleasant surprise. And then I just got nominated a few weeks ago for another Costume Designer Guild Award, which is, I believe, streaming live April 13th. And that also is for The Masked Singer season 4. And we've got Emmys around the corner. So in the next few months, we'll know if there's going to be another Emmy nomination. But to be honest with you, I'm very honored and very humbled by all these incredible accolades. But at the same time, it still seems every time there's a nomination or an award, I really don't even know you know, how to kind of take it all in because I never thought if you were to ask my 16 or 20-year-old self that someday we'll be talking about the amount of Emmys that I've been able to receive, it just seems so surreal. I never would have thought that it would gotten me to the point of where I'm at, and I believe I was the youngest to win an Emmy for costume design as well, my first one.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool. Do
And
you
the
get
most interesting thing too, to add to that really quickly, I don't know if I know we work very hard, but to some degree, I have to say that there is some power above or a blessing that happens because all my Emmy wins have been for the first time of me doing something. So the very first time I did TV, I got a nomination and a win. The very first time I did Super Bowl, I got a nomination and a win. The very first time I did the Grammys. So for some incredible reason, you know, I don't know if my whole heart goes into these projects and I get so excited when I have the opportunity, but it's been a blessing to see that type of, you know, reformation coming back in.
That's actually that's actually pretty neat. Which how does that work though? Like for subsequent of the same show, um, you're nominated automatically, or someone has to nominate you?
The nomination process is between the peer group and the Academy. Each one is very different. For the Emmys, it's the Academy members that then present the top shows that are on television. And in my field, in my category, there's about over 200 shows that get submitted. So the designers do submit, or the network submits for the particular season or the particular period of the award season. And then it's up to the peers to vote. And, you know, it's all my fellow costume designers or Academy Award members that kind of provide us with that beautiful opportunity. For the Costume Designers Guild, it's all costume designers. So we're all rooting for each other, and it's, you know, being recognized by your peers and being able to kind of work together and support one another.
Ethel, did you have a question, or Herb? I see
I
you.
was going to comment your creativity, and it's just like you have this natural talent that you use. But I just want to know your opinion of everyday fashion today. I think, in my opinion, people are walking around like in legal pajamas. I mean, there's not much design, or it doesn't do much for the person wearing it. It's very mundane. I can't even put it into words. Maybe you can express differently. You see people on the street. What is your opinion?
It's funny, before you answer, Marina, because I was actually wondering if when you see someone walk by you, you know, dressed in their own little fashion world that they've created for themselves, if that ever inspires you to something. But Ethel's saying people don't really have the fashion.
You know, I think society is in a really interesting period, transition period. I don't want to say this tracksuit, comfortable leisure style is here to stay. I do think we went through a period in the past few years where comfort became the big key in mass marketing. It became very, I don't want to say lazy wear, but it became easy wear, you know. But however, I am starting to internally see that there is a switch happening with the brands. There is, I guess, that inspiration again, especially coming out of COVID right now. I think we'll see a lot of brands wanting to explore fabrics and style again. Like I said, I think everything comes in its forms and in its time. And it's just that where the fashion went the past few years is that at home, comfortable streetwear, easy clothing, you know, which does kind of limit us on the design aspect of it. You know, it's very hard to generalize the mass markets of the fashion industry because it's, you know, it's definitely not what you see is happening in Europe. So I think everybody's kind of taking in their own steps to figuring out the market and also the economical expenses. People are buying less, or they're creating at home more. So I think with that being said in mind, businesses are trying to understand how to stay sustainable and how to, there's been a huge drive in creating fabrics that are plant-based, that, you know, keeping everything biodegradable. So with those things, it's easier to design a sweatshirt, you know, and it's more lucrative for certain brands to go that route than to go back in the day where it was suiting and avant-garde type of ambiance and beautiful hats and accessories. You know, I just think right now we're stuck in a different genre of fashion and of cultural development, as I do think we'll see a switch in the next few years as well, where there's going to be another decade of new direction of fashion, and females are going to go back to being dressed up and men are going to go back to some sort of a business attire. I think it's just economically and what's happening politically, all those things affect the fashion design world. And I think it is going to slowly tweed back to new opportunities.
Well, it used to be that the general public emulated the wealthy and how they
Right.
dress.
Right.
Now we're dressing like the street, the low-cut jeans, the motorcycle jacket, the as tags on the outside. You know, it's to me, it's a little upside down.
Right. You know, and it's like the influences are also very confusing. You know, like you said that there was that particular standard, you know, that the people looked up. I think now because there's this huge boom of entrepreneurship going on and everybody's having their own business, especially for the past year, everyone's working from home. Those type of comfort zones do shift how people present themselves and how they dress. So I like, for me, it's a different field because I'm so heavily involved with costume design that, you know, for me, it's like, I will never put that on stage. I will always try to emulate bigger and better and inspire people and visually stimulate. But that's a completely different, you know, kind of like entertainment. So I do think with streetwear, as long as we can create a new comfort, a new level of what comfortable looks like, I do think you'll see a shift coming in very, very soon as far as going back to really presenting yourself and being in public and being able to dress up and take that time.
Well, the fabrics nowadays are
Right.
fabulous.
Right.
There's been a tremendous shift in fabric and care.
Yeah, and the textile industry keeps evolving. So, you know, so that's why I think there is going to be another shift and another turnaround moment as to how we view the fashion industry and then also the costuming industry. Even now, we're talking about using, you know, technology a lot more to allow us to design better, to be a little bit more technical and discreet. For me, I'm still a little old school. I like to be able to touch my fabrics. I like to be able to sew by hand. I think there's so much character that craftsmanship brings to the base of the costume and to the finished project. You know, it tells more of a story. But I think there's just so many different avenues that we all have to be open to and see, you know, back to my comment about being able to kind of understand who you are and find the things that you're happy with and how you dress and how you look. And then hopefully that will inspire somebody else to be like, oh, that looks incredible. That's a unique statement piece. And those are the things that I think we'll start seeing, you know, as the doors open up to people being more in public again and kind of figuring out our own normalcy. I think all industries will come together and try to make that a more beautiful life for us, you know, visually as well.
Thank you.
I just read the book, The Gown,
Yes.
6 months ago, about the embroidery and it was the gown for Queen Elizabeth's wedding and what went into producing that one gown. It was just unbelievable.
Oh, I can't even imagine, you know, on the smaller scale, what we do on TV takes us hours. You know, I've been in a place where I've literally had to redo the costume multiple times because it wasn't up to my expectations or it wasn't up to the standards. We've had moments where we thought everything was perfect and then the beading came apart. So you had to go back and rebead everything by hand. And the amount of work, the tedious amount of work that goes into building a piece of fabric, even just having something on a roll of material that you go and get, and then trying to cut that in such a way that it's unique, then trying to sew it in a way that it's different, you know, and all those embellishments, and all the tone.
Definitely an art.
Yeah.
Marina, do you have time for 2 more questions? I want to respect your time as well. I know it's
yeah, absolutely.
So one question was, they're both from the chat. One was private to me and one was on the public part. So what if any red carpet, I'm getting a couple questions, hold on. What if any red carpet events have you attended? And then were you especially excited or starstruck to meet a certain celebrity?
You know, it's interesting being behind the scenes. I don't really get the opportunity to be on the red carpet that much. Like, I'm usually there fixing somebody. But my red carpet moments have probably, my best ones have been attending the Emmys. I remember clearly my second time winning. I wasn't ready for a speech and I didn't know we had, you know, I didn't even plan on receiving the award. And then when we got up to the microphone, Morgan Freeman was sitting right in front of me. And that's when my mind just went blank. I didn't realize why we were on stage. What am I supposed to say? I'm just staring at somebody that I've always watched in movies and loved so much. And he's just casually sitting there and just looking up, and at that moment, I don't even know what came out of my mouth. I don't remember. I think I thanked people. And even coming off stage, I looked at my supervisor. I'm like, "Do you know what just happened?" And it's like it was a complete blank. It's like So it's like I have my moments of being starstruck because like I admire those people so much. And I think because over the years I worked with so many celebrities, I also have a different perspective on them and a different perception to where I know they're human. So I've been able to really understand my line of work and how to approach being able to work with so many names, and I treat them just such as human beings and being able to collaborate. But I think that was probably the one experience in my life where I just, till this day, I probably should go back in YouTube and see what I said, but I have no idea what happened in that 5 minutes.
You should probably check it. I'm going to check it out for you.
Yeah.
I'll send you a link. Which one was it? Was that your first Emmy or your second?
I think it was I remember it was the first one. I was overly prepared and I still don't remember what I said, but I think I had that memorized. That was like an acting speech for me where I knew if that opportunity came about, I could not miss a certain person that I was like so grateful for. But I think it was my second win that I just remember Morgan Freeman's face in front of me. That's about it. That was probably the highlight.
What did you wear to the Emmys?
My first year, I wore a gold gown. And
Did you design it?
No, I did not. Not once have I gone to the Emmys and I designed my own dress. I think a lot of it has to be with the chef doesn't touch his own food.
Exactly.
Makers, you have no shoes, right?
Yeah, and the stress. I think if I had to design my own dress, I think I would never have a dress. I would probably again have multiple options,
showing it,
not knowing what
getting the award.
And I think that's the beautiful part with these award shows is you get to support so many other designers. There's so many other people that I just love, and I also love shopping. It's what I do for a living. So it was wonderful that I had the support of the showrooms in LA and the designers in LA that welcomed me in and had me try on a few gowns.
Marina, that's actually a question that someone asked me privately. Like in that regard, are you given clothing to wear to promote a company or a designer? Same thing with jewelry and shoes, accessories. Is that a standard?
I think it's a marketing tool. That's how the industry really circulates, especially when it comes to dressing big red carpets. We always, if it's somebody, I work with Carrie Underwood. I've been with her for almost 10 years now. And every time we have a big red carpet, of course, my fellow stylist and I, we try to look at what's popular, what's different enough, what brands are up and coming, what established brands are, what are they producing, what's very unique, and you try to find the best thing, and we have racks and racks of clothing during our fittings to really find that one moment that's just like probably is the most beautiful gown or the most unique gown, or it's about the hand embellishment. So we're very careful to see what's very significant about certain pieces that we choose. So that does come with promotion. That does come with, being able to say who you're wearing on the red carpet, being able to give credit to the jewelers or the accessories that they have on. So that does become that is how the industry kind of like revolves around being able to mass produce and keep afloat and also keep their brand up and brand recognition.
Does that mean they're gifts and then returns, or once you select one, it's paid for?
It's very different ways. For red carpets, most brands need promotion. So they would loan us a dress, jewelry would be loaned. There's been many moments where certain items have been gifted. But majority of the time, it's kind of this loan to loan basis where we loan the dress for the evening. You then in return, please, acknowledge who you're wearing and give us promotion. And then we're the people in the middle that are trying to make sure that transaction happens, that the artist is aware who they have on, what brand of shoes they're wearing, what diamonds they have on, who to say, when to say, who to thank on the carpet. So it's like we really do advocate for all those things in order to keep the relationship between the client and the brand.
Okay, now do you find, there's another question from the chat.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that knockoffs, I know they're saying Chinese knockoffs, but in general knockoffs, do they make it more difficult for you as fashion designers?
Um, yes and no, because I think it's almost like, you know, it's a big flattery that there are certain designs that are so impactful that other brands almost have to take those ideas and, and mass produce it for a lower price point and for the masses to wear. You know, those are the pieces when they become very accessible. On the other hand, it does become very difficult where something is very specific and at a certain price point and creatively has that intellectual property that it becomes the design of the brand that you then all of a sudden see it everywhere. So I think it has that duality. I'm not an advocate for knocking off anybody because I think every brand, that's what's so special about them. But sometimes I've also seen on a positive note where certain things were then changed up just enough to where you have that recognition, but at the same time they become more affordable. You know, you're talking about gowns that are like $30,000, $50,000, and most common folks, you know, will never be able to afford something like that. Most celebrities can afford something like that. So when you do have another outlet or resource that can then provide a certain idea to the masses, I always thought that it would be best if those brands work together. You know, that instead of knocking off stuff, like if there's a brand somewhere um, in China or a mass production factory that can then bring this to the masses, I never understood why they couldn't collaborate, you know? So that's where I think the proper way to go about it would be to work together with that designer and see what they can do to reestablish that content, you know, and mass produce it. But it does happen and quite often, you know, and hard to say. But I'm more for brands working together and trying to figure out how to bring it to the common public.
I like that. I'm sure there's a business reason why they don't do it, but kind of to keep it exclusive.
Right. Right.
So last question that someone asked is, what do you think of, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing his name correct, Christian Siriano, who was, I think, a winner of Project Runway.
Runway, yeah.
His design. And as a designer.
Yeah, he's done great for himself. You know, he was wonderful on the show. I did watch that season, and I have many friends of mine that have worn his designs. I think his smart business technique, where he actually designs for everybody, size, height, you know what I mean? He really expands himself to be a brand that is for all. I think his couture work is stunning. But I'm a big fan of his work.
Thank you.
And I love to see it that he's gone from, you know, smaller red carpets to I see his stuff on the Oscars. I see his stuff at the Golden Globes, many big, you know, acclaimed music awards. So I think it's incredible.
Thank you. And I wanted to thank you for this. You're an inspiration, not just to younger women, as you mentioned, but definitely to your parents, to me. From your dad, I learned about you. That's how I eventually, and I know he quells, to use the word that we were trying to teach you in the beginning. He quells. He gets a lot of pride and joy from everything and from your children, your career. Yeah. And thank you so much. I think you've
thank you.
Your work speaks tremendously. And definitely your peers have definitely shown that they appreciate it and acknowledge it as well. So thank you.
Thank you so much. This means a lot to me, and thank you so much for having me today. And you know, I just hope that, you know, I've always looked at it, greatness attracts greatness, and I'm here to now, you know, be able to pass it on to so many other people that I just want to see greatness in their life and to keep going and keep achieving the things that they want.
Well, keep on achieving those things. Good luck and only success. Keep having success.
Thank you very much.
In the film industry.
Great immigration story. Look came here when she was 11. Look what she's achieved. Fabulous.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's my dad.
Much good luck to you.